Do you think Israel needed October 7 to happen so they can start the process of ethnic cleansing through bombing out of people in Gaza?
Mosab Hassan Yousef is the son of one of the founders of Hamas. And initially, he followed in his father's footsteps and he wanted to be a Palestinian fighter. But in around 1997, he defected to Israel and has been campaigning for them ever since. You're about to see him debate Aidan Doyle, whose Twitter is on the screen now. And Aidan absolutely wipes the floor with him. The original video is available on the Daily Reminders YouTube channel.
I thought for many years that I was Palestinian before I dropped that identity. And today I take it very seriously because Palestine or Palestinian is an ideology, political ideology that is affiliated with so much violence, aggression, violation of human rights. And it does not represent ethnicity. It's not a nation. It was never a country. It's not a religion. It's not a distinct language. All I know that it was a colonial entity that lasted approximately 25 years, since 1922 to 1948.
What's relevant is that a Palestinian national identity, of which nobody can deny, has formed. It started forming in the early 1900s, and it has been prevalent ever since then. And it is more powerful now maybe than it has ever been. But then to say that because a Palestinian national identity formed only in the early 1900s and that people didn't call themselves Palestinian before then, again, is irrelevant, because we don't say that Germans aren't German because people called themselves Prussian before 1871. Likewise, we don't say that Israelis aren't Israeli because Ashkenazi Jews in the Middle Ages didn't call themselves Israeli. It's kind of an irrelevant distinction, especially considering that a national identity, especially in terms of the nation state, only began, as an ideology, 200 years ago? So to say that because Palestinians didn't call themselves Palestinian in the 1500s, it doesn't have anything to do with the Palestinian nationality.
It's such a good point. So many Zionists come out with these arguments like, show me one Palestinian coin, or what was the Palestinian national anthem before 1900, as if any of that would make it okay to boot people out of the country they live in, out of their land, out of their houses, and then continue killing them. Next up, they're going to talk about the killing of innocents in the conflict.
That only Israel is killing civilians in Gaza. In the confrontation, in the shootouts, in the booby traps, Hamas is responsible, number one, for the atrocities of Gaza. And I think this is the problem with the anti-Israel, pro-Palestine movement, that they are in denial. They don't want to condemn Hamas for actually operating from populated areas and putting the civilians in the ways of harm. What are we expecting from any army trying to remove a bunch of savages from power? And there is no other way but to send foot soldiers. There is no other way but to confront, while the savages hide behind their own children. In the morning, they kill Jewish children for revenge, and in the evening, they kill their own children for propaganda. And this is how they brought the world to its knees, by harming civilians. This is the weapon in Hamas' hands.
In a scenario where Hamas militants are putting children on the rooftops of military command centers, well, then those specific deaths are the responsibility of Hamas. But the deaths of the people in Tel al-Satan, right, the 40 innocent civilians who were killed by an IDF strike with no Hamas military center anywhere near, that is the responsibility of Israel. In Karim al-Sharif, back in the early couple months of the war, where 106 civilians were killed, again with no military center anywhere near, those deaths are the responsibility of Israel. And in any hospital that Israel bombs, in any safe zone, in any evacuation route, all of which Israel has bombed not only a few times, but repeatedly throughout the conflict, that is not only unjustifiable, not only illegal under international law because of a lack of proportionality, oftentimes the negligence of dropping leaflets, which is actually the bare minimum according to international law.
Yeah, the IDF do drop leaflets, as he's mentioning here, warning of an imminent attack, which apparently is the bare minimum under international law. I've also seen leaflets in the West Bank dropped by the IDF encouraging people to turn in their fellow Palestinians or to inform. Maybe Mosab Hassan Yousef read one of those leaflets.
But also because it is asymmetrical civilian targeted warfare, which has been Israel's strategy since 2006, which constitutes a genocide. But it's not only the killing of innocent civilians directly with their 2,000-pound bombs in Gaza and the targeting of civilian centers, whether Hamas is there or not. The genocide really precedes this, or at least the evidence of genocide precedes this, and even in the past few years when Israel would deliberately target Hamas commanders' houses, but they would deliberately target Hamas commanders' houses when only the Hamas Hamas commander was at home, but when the entire family was home. And keep in mind, Israel knew, because of their artificial intelligence and their advanced sophisticated weaponry, when the entire family would be home. They decided to destroy the house when the entire family was home, when they had the option not to. And so the deliberate targeting of innocent civilians by Israel is evident. But it is not just that, it is also the starvation of the Gazan people. And time's up, but we can probably get into the evidence for the starvation and for the targeting of innocent civilians.
So just to be clear, your position is that Israel is intentionally targeting civilians in Gaza?
Yeah.
I don't think Israel would target civilians intentionally. That's not possible. First of all, it would be totally idiotic. Why Israel would want to target civilians to create so much enemies around the globe? I was part of the Israeli operation for about 10 years, and many times there were civilians involved, and we canceled the operation. But the gravity of the situation in Gaza is completely different. When we have Hamas high-profile, dangerous terrorists who would hide in the tunnel for a long period of time, then Israel would have a shot. And now this Hamas top leaders go hiding behind civilians. Does that make them immune? This is a war. And in war, there are red lines that nobody should ever cross. But is there a war without collateral damage, without civilians dying in it, especially when the terrorists deliberately hiding among civilians, using hospitals, schools as operation rooms? I've been in those hospitals and in the schools right beneath in the tunnels. If I wasn't there myself, I wouldn't even speak about it. It's mind-blowing how Hamas constructed their entire operation beneath the most vulnerable areas on a purpose, because they wanted to drag Israel into such a dirty war to delegitimize Israel, to show that Israel is killing civilians. And what you are doing and the pro-Palestine doing here in the United States, you are falling into Hamas trap. There is no way Israel want to harm any civilian on a purpose. But Israel, do you think, is not aware that civilians being harmed? And it's a tragedy for Israel, what's happening.
The proposition that Mosab has put forth is that Israel is not intentionally targeting civilians. Unfortunately, that goes against the Israeli strategy in the region. Now, keep in mind that the whole idea behind Zionism, behind a Jewish state, is a Jewish majority. So I actually don't think that genocide is necessarily always going to be the conclusion of Zionism, because most of the time it's going to be something along the lines of ethnic cleansing. But if Israel wants to actually fulfill their goals of a Jewish state in the Holy Land, then ethnic cleansing is necessary for that goal. Unfortunately for Israel, and certainly unfortunately for the Gazans, is that creating a refugee crisis, which was the intention of Zionists like Jabotinsky and Theodore Herzl, and of course David Ben-Gurion, and many of the early prime ministers, and certainly Benjamin Netanyahu right now, creating a refugee crisis is impossible because of the refusal of the Arab states around them to actually take in refugees. The result is that the only way to perform ethnic cleansing is through deliberate murder of civilians, which is what Israel is doing right now. And the evidence for that I've already outlined, that they target buildings where there are no Hamas military centers, but also they target buildings, whether they're Hamas militants in there or not, that the targeting of which is illegal under international law. It is the targeting of a population center, regardless of whether it's a military target, without regard to proportionality. We could probably get into proportionality at some point later in the discussion, but again, there is no excuse for the deliberate starvation of the population, which is one of the things that constitutes genocide, which nobody can defend and nobody can say it's because they don't want Hamas to survive or to thrive, because bread and water and cookies don't do anything for Hamas. They only allow the Palestinian population to not starve to death.
Do you think Israel needed October 7th to happen so they can start the process of ethnic cleansing through bombing the out of people in Gaza? If there was an ethnic cleansing, it would have taken place over 70 years, and today you wouldn't find any Arab in the region. The ethnic cleansing actually took place in the Arab countries. Show me how many Jewish people are in the West Bank or in Gaza. Show me how many Arabs are in any Jewish in the Arab countries.
There are 400,000 Jewish people in the West Bank right now. They're settlers.
Hold on.
No, there's 400,000 in the West Bank.
This is a really good point. Someone just shouted out there's 0, and he had to correct them. There's 400,000 settlers living in the West Bank. And the point is, they're not living amongst the Palestinians as Jewish Palestinians. They're living there as settlers in segregated Jewish-only areas, racial colonies.
Was the removal of Jewish people from Gaza, was that a result of the IDF removing them in 2005, or is that a result of Hamas pushing them out? It was a result of the IDF pushing them out in 2005. Then you asked the question about are there Jewish people in the West Bank? Well, Area C is a part of the West Bank. It is an occupied territory, and there are 400,000 Jewish settlers there. I don't know why anybody would dispute that. That's just a fact. But then you talk about why are there still 2 million Israeli Arabs living in Israel right now? Well, it's important to understand what the goal of Zionism was, because the goal of Zionism has never been to eliminate every single single Arab ever. It's never been to even ethnically cleanse every single Arab from Palestine. The whole goal of Zionism, having a Jewish state, was to just have a Jewish majority state. And if you actually understand the roots of Zionism, you'll understand that it was totally acceptable for the early Zionists to have, say, 2 million Arabs living in Israel, as long as there were many, many, many more Jewish people. So Zionism is both conducive to ethnic cleansing and to the reality of the situation, which is, of course, ethnic cleansing, which is that 2 million Arabs have been allowed to remain in Israel. It's not about getting every last Arab out of Israel. It's more about maintaining racial supremacy over Arabs in order so that the interests of the state of Israel and the Jewish people are maintained. It bears complete disregard to the Arab people in Israel and all the Palestinians in Palestine.
What a great point. He's nailed it. It doesn't require that all the Palestinians be killed. The state just needs to maintain the Jewish majority. And that's where the ethnic cleansing comes in. I used to think that ethnic cleansing was another word for genocide, but it seems that it's a genocide to a lesser degree. Kind of like the idea the Nazis had in the early days when they were just happy for Jewish people to go and live somewhere else, move to another country, before they pushed for the final solution and started eliminating them.
You ever been to Israel?
No. But I'll say, what is happening to Israel and Palestine doesn't care whether I've been there or not. It's the reality, whether you like it or not. You can say what you want. You can say what you want. The evidence speaks for itself.
Having a bit of a Douglas Murray moment there. You've never been.
The evidence speaks for itself, because when you murder innocent civilians, it doesn't care whether Aidan Doyle goes to UCLA or not. It cares whether innocent civilians are murdered or not. It doesn't care whether Mosab was born in Palestine. It cares whether innocent civilians were murdered or not. That's the reality. It doesn't matter where I come from or where Mosab comes from. You have to understand that the actual reality, it doesn't matter where you come from. You can still understand what is happening, because it doesn't care. Because it doesn't care. It doesn't care who. Whether somebody dies or not. If I'm born in the United States, it doesn't affect whether somebody dies in Palestine. You don't understand that.
You're going to get to ask him whatever you want afterwards.
We will have Q&As, guys, after.
Facts matter. Facts do matter. Facts matter. Facts don't change if I was born in Palestine or born in the United States. They don't change. They don't change.
As Ben Shapiro would say, facts don't care about your feelings.
Okay, and what's the source of your information?
Is Benny Morris okay? Is that a good source?
Give me a legitimate book, and I would like to know an author that has the legitimacy, that they have studied, and they have the authority to speak on the topic. Name 3 books.
Can you name 10 books?
As source of your information.
Yeah, sure. The Nation Forum by Rashida Khalidi.
Who is that? I never heard of this woman.
He was actually one of the peace process in the 90s.
Okay.
But you don't know about him. That's fine. I still respect your opinion. It doesn't mean that you're wrong just because you don't know a single author, okay? That's fine. I can go on. Benny Morris, The Righteous Victims, 1948. Both of those books. Does that satisfy you, or do you want me to keep on going?
Keep going.
Or do the facts change depending on how many books I've read? I could also talk about things called Creating a Nation by Aidan Balabar, or I could talk about Shlomo Sand, a Tel Aviv author who wrote The Invention of the Jewish People, an Israeli Tel Aviv author. So if your point is that what I'm saying is not right because I haven't read enough books, well, you're wrong on both counts.
All the books that you read looks like going only in one direction, to delegitimize Israel.
Do you know who Benny Morris is?
I don't need to know. I think you're just making up stuff.
I think that's my favourite part. You're just using making up stuff. I'm going to use that one myself.
The Making of the Israeli Nation.
And I think...
Making of the Israeli Nation. Do you know that book, or are you just uneducated? What's the answer?
Listen, what did I tell you from the beginning of this conversation? I don't need to read books to know my
you
land.
don't need to read books, but
I
do.
don't need. I write the books. I write them. I live the experience. I am the author.
All the credibility you gained...
I am not a second-hand knowledge.
All of the credibility that you gained by living in Palestine was taken away from you when Israel put you on their paycheck.
Okay.
Do
you have evidence that I have a paycheck from Israel?
You worked for Israel for 6 years. It's in your biography.
What's your evidence?
So you weren't paid to work for Israel. You just did it willingly.
Well,
exactly.
10 years fighting and chasing after terrorists who blow up, killed Americans, Israelis, Arabs, Muslims, all type of people indiscriminately. Do you think you can sit here and judge me and tell me it's like you did for money?
When you say you're fighting for Israel, would you say that you're advocating for them?
I told you I only represent myself.
So you're not fighting for Israel.
And you don't have the authority to sit there and judge, tell me I took money or I did not take money. This is not your business.
No, you did take money. That's a fact, and that's fine.
This is not your business.
You took money from Israel, and that's okay. You're a propagandist for Israel. That's just a fact, and it's the reality of the situation. But again, I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times I have to say. I can speak from my own authority. I can speak from the authority of historians. I can speak from the authority of the thousands of Palestinians who live in in Palestine who are actually living there right now. Because at the end of the day, the reality of the situation doesn't care about Aidan Doyle or Mosab Yousef. Whether there's a genocide going on, which there is, it doesn't matter whether I was born in the United States or not. It is simply the reality. And you can check all my sources. You can go read.
Define a genocide. You speak of what is genocide?
Oh, sure. The killing of a whole or a part of a population with intent. Well, are you happy? Do you not think I'd...
This is not what a genocide is.
That is the definition of a genocide.
Mr. Doyle, let me ask you something.
I'm sorry that you don't know what the definition of a genocide is, but that is the reality.
Let me ask you something.
With intent based on what? Based on their ethnicity, based on their religion, based on their culture?
Based on their national identity as Palestinians.
Well, Palestine is
But you can talk about intent. I mean, we can start naming names. We can go back to Emily Eliyahu, who wanted to nuke Gaza. We can go back to Theodore Herzl, who wanted to remove all of the Gazans from, all the Palestinians from Palestine. We could go back to the Mowing the Lawn initiative, which is high-frequency, civilian-targeted, asymmetrical warfare that targets civilian infrastructure.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you go.
Do you think?
It doesn't matter where you go. There is intent.
One moment. Do you think you are smarter than the judge of the ICC who just said that what happens in Gaza is not a genocide?
Do you mean the ICJ?
The ICJ, yeah. Do you think you are smarter than the judge?
Absolutely not. Do you think you're smarter than the judge?
I am not smarter than the judge. And the judge said what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide.
No. Actually, that's not true. What they said, well, for one, the determination as to whether a genocide is going on actually hasn't been deliberated, so you're just spreading misinformation. What they said was that the rights of the Palestinian people, especially the rights of the people of Gaza, are at risk of, the rights to not be genocided are at risk of being infringed. And they said that in order for Israel to comply with international law in all three resolutions that they have released, they had to do a number of things. They had to stop targeting civilian population centers. They had to stop starving the population, which includes arresting the people who were stopping the aid from getting into Gaza, which they haven't done. And they also had to not invade Rafah. None of those three things they have done. And so when Mosab says that the ICJ has said that Israel is not committing genocide, they made no such determination. The actual determination will come out in probably 2 or 3 years.
Who do you think won that debate? Let me know in the comments, especially if you're a neutral. Are there any neutrals on this issue? It's very divisive. And let me know if you think that was actually Sacha Baron Cohen releasing a new character.